Well, hello, everybody. Merry Christmas. This episode today is dropping Christmas Day. What we're going to work on today and really think about and talk about is going to be really the difference between desires and goals. And the reason that I want to give this talk to you today is because coming up in the next couple weeks, we're going to be spending a lot of time setting goals, making plans, doing the do's, getting ourselves set up for the new year. And when it comes to money goals that are rooted in either like the should do's, must do's, kind of shamey goals, things like I should be further along in my retirement, so I'm going to say more kind of vibes. These kinds of goals are very difficult to get done. All right. And when our goals also match our true desires, I find that those clients who have real truth, real desires in their goals tend to make those things happen. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, first I'm going to explain my perspective on why I think this is what happens. But when we have goals that feel like should do's, must do's, like, I'm kind of like nitpicking myself about where I should or shouldn't, I should be further along, when our goals are rooted in that kind of behavior or, thought processes, I think it is very difficult for the subconscious to make sacrifices in real life, like in real time, in present time, for things that are going to happen in the future, right? Because we have our conscious mind. Our conscious mind can go into the future, it can go into the past, it can read a spreadsheet. And a lot of times our money goals are really only for the conscious mind, right? But the subconscious mind is present. The subconscious mind is where the body's, more aligned with the subconscious mind. And when we're saying to your body and we're saying in the moment, I want to give up nachos and margaritas with the girls because I want to have this money in retirement, if that's not true, like if there's no real truth of desire in that, it's really, really hard to get those things done. Now, I do want to mention here, what I'm talking about is about finding desire. And there are going to be some things financially that are not going to be real true desires, right? Like saving for retirement is probably not going to be like a real true desire. Like your heart's not really calling for a great retirement for most people, even though your mind is for sure probably screaming about a retirement. And should you save for retirement? Absolutely. Should you set that up automatically? Set it up, right? But once those habits are in place, and I would highly suggest using automatic payments for those to kind of help you to overcome what I'm talking about here, where if we have to really consider the giving something up in the present to be able to save, it does make it very difficult to do it. There's always an obstacle. There's always a reason to not do it. So I would really highly suggest setting those things up. And I just want to be real plain about that, because financial habits are harder to build than other kinds of habits, because most of us get paid twice a month. You know what I mean? So there's not enough repetition of task to create the habit loops for many, many people, right? It just depends on how often you do something, whether or not a habit loop is formed. So things like saving, we want to use technology, set up those ACHs or the automatic withdrawal to go into your retirement accounts, to go into your working capital, to go into your pleasure kinds of accounts. We want that to happen automatically. Right. And that's a good sense. But what I'm talking about here is more about desire. It's more about the lifestyle that you're wanting to create. For us, the work that we do, our blood, sweat, our tears, our time, our attention, that work goes into making money. And the money can be transformed into the lifestyle that we want. And if we're not clear with ourselves about what we desire to experience, what we desire to have, what we desire to do, who we desire to be, it's really easy to live in the matrix. Like it's really just easy to a year to go by and you feel like you're in the same spot as you were last year, without, you just kind of live your life on autopilot. And there's learning to tap into desire, and having desire help you to choose your alignment, help you to choose your actions, help you to choose the lifestyle that you're building is luscious. Having a life that's full of like desires being played with and met, and like that kind of, that kind of energy of like going after your desires, having experiences that like really tickle your heart, buying things that make you really feel good, and really, really like funding the lifestyle that you want is so just juicy. And when it comes to money, I think many of us have dramas around what we should spend or what we shouldn't spend, or how we should work, or how hard we have to work, or those kind of things. And I think that it can really get in the way of the desire. And I'm going to just, like make a little wink and a nod. So for many years, as the patriarchy women's desires were just kind of a pain in the ass, right? Because if you didn't have your own ability to get your desires met, you needed somebody else to do that. And so the more desires you had, the more ambition you had, you were kind of a pain in the ass of a wife, right? And so women's desires have been really structurally, like culturally, socially repressed for a long time. And that's financially, right? Like if you really pay attention to what we say about ambitious women, it's not the same as what we say about ambitious men. So it's not the ambition that's like the problem here. It's that women have ambition. When we talk about sex drive, right? Like women's sex is much more shamed than men's sex. So women's sexual desires, again, shamed, repressed. Our desires to want nice things, to charge high prices, to be highly valued. There's a lot of social conditioning that can come up around these things. And I just want you to acknowledge that for yourself as you get into really figuring out what it is you do want. Because a lot of times when I'm working with clients, we have to kind of reprogram more of those subconscious things. So that way, even owning your desires doesn't feel guilty, wrong, bad, shameful, right? So I just, depending on where you're starting, the amount of conditioning you have around desire, just may be different. And when we work with our desires, that's the place where universal support comes online at just a very different kind of level than if you're trying to do something that you don't really want. Right? Because the way that I see desire is like desire is not necessarily your energy. It's like a life force energy itself working through you. The same quality of desire that works through. So when I talk about desire, some people will call it desire. Some people will call it creative energy. Sometimes you'll hear it described as erotic energy, sexual energy, life force energy. This is what I'm talking. It's the same quality of energy, right? And so there's this quality of like life pulsing through you, right? Like a life is driving you to do something, right? And so when your sweet little soul like wants to try something or wants to experience something or whatever else, you're going to feel like that desire for it. Now, if your desires are really denied and repressed, a lot of times you're going to feel a lot of resentment. What I find when I'm really kind of feeling into, like when I'm talking to clients, when we're figuring these things out, resentment is usually a desire that is denied or repressed or disowned or something you won't let yourself have typically. So if you're feeling resentful, I would reframe it and just ask myself, well, what do I want here? And it can be really simple things. Like one of the things I used to be resentful about was before I had this business, I was still taking evening appointments when I was like selling stocks and bonds and things. And I didn't really want to be taking evening appointments, but I felt like I needed to. Whenever I felt like I needed to make an appointment and somebody didn't have evening appointments, like the dentist, or, you couldn't have an evening appointment at the doctor's office or whatever, I would feel like resentful. And I'd be like, well, why do they get their evenings and I don't get my evenings? Right. And there would be this resentment. And it was really because I wanted to say no more evening appointments. I wanted my evenings to myself. I wanted my evenings at my house with my kids, and I wouldn't let myself have it. So when I saw other people letting themselves have it, I would feel resentful. And a lot of times resentment is that sort of thing, right? Like if we're resentful of our spouse, a lot of times that resentment is going to be because he might be out having time to himself and we're not getting time to ourselves and we want time for ourselves, right? Or whatever flavor that is. We get resentful of our coworkers, right? Especially if somebody gets credit, we did all the work, right? We're going to feel a certain kind of resentful about that. And so as you're starting to uncover your desires, especially if this is kind of new to you, I would start with anytime you notice yourself feeling resentful, just ask yourself, is there a desire here that I want? Is there something here that I want that I'm not acknowledging or I'm not owning or I haven't said out loud? Or I think I can't have, or I think I shouldn't want, kind of that. Usually that's going to be, there'll be something there most of the time. So that's one way to kind of start to liberate desires. One of the next things that you can do is just check in with yourself on a pretty regular basis. Like, what do I want in this moment? And sometimes desires are big things like, I want to write a book, or, I want to go to the Grand Canyon. But sometimes they're just like, I want to read a book, and the way that I like to play with desire is when you're really in the flow of desire, you can trust your impulses because the universe is working with you. So the universe might be like, go to the coffee shop, and you're like, you get there and then all of a sudden you meet your next client, or you know what I mean? Like sometimes there's a lot of magic that happens when we're in the flow with our desires. Now, the next thing I want to say about really playing in the flow of desire is one, that there's a ton of universal support. When I'm working with clients who are really on their path and really doing the things that like they're led to do, that they're desires that life force is pulling them through, I see a lot more speed, a lot more ease, a lot more meeting the right person at the right place at the right time, good luck, good fortune, serendipity. Those are the sort of things that like universal support is extra when you're really on your path. And then like the real thing is the more you play with your desires, the more joyful and fulfilled you are. And what's interesting is who said it? Somebody I read his books. I think it's Dane here. I think in one of his books, he says that money follows joy. Joy doesn't follow money. And from my experience working, with tens of thousands of women over the last, I don't know, was that like 12, 13 years? It's true. People who love their work, people who are joyful and fulfilled in their work tend to make much more money. When we're on the path of our desire, there's so much more like high vibe stuff. Like there's more gratitude, there's more ease, there's more joy, there's much more fulfillment. And so as you are, you might have a little bit more downtime over the next week or two. And as we're coming into the new year, one of the things that I would really encourage you to reflect on is what are the habits that need to be in place for next year for me to meet my financial goals? What are my goals? What tasks do I need to get done kind of vibes? And what are my like real true desires? Like, what do I want from this life? Because when we have these financial goals that again are just so dry, brittle, like when they're boring and dry, they're just really, really hard to get done. So I would just want to encourage you that there are some things that we don't even really want to consider as a goal or a desire, like saving money for retirement. Just set it up automatically. Set your savings up to happen automatically, so you get the benefit of habit building from the technology. And then you can go in and check on your money. But what works better for people is if you don't have to consider, should I save this money or not? Because there's always a reason not to. There's always something that's pressing. There's always something that you're going to need. There's always something that you're going to want. And it's very, very difficult for the mind to put something off today that you want or need today in exchange for something that you're not going to get until you retire. It's a very, very difficult mental concept. Cognitively difficult. Like it makes sense cognitively, but when you're actually going to do it, people who set up their savings habits automatically do significantly better. So when it comes to those kinds of habits, set them up automatically, right? Set them up automatically for the new year. All right. And if you're scared, if that freaks you out, start with a small amount of money. Start with something that you could do. And then every week go and increase it by whatever is a reasonable amount, or do it once a month. You know what I mean? Just go ahead and start where you are and increase it a little at a time. You'll find that if you start with something small, you won't even miss the money. And then you can get good at saving more. Right. And you can do it a little at a time so it feels good. So there are some things that I just want you to consider as habits. You're either doing them or you're not, right? Like it's not necessarily like a big goal. Like it's like you either do it or you don't. Goals will be things like saving for a vacation or making a certain amount of money, things like that. But desire is really about, what do I want from this life? Like, where do I want to go? Who do I want to be? What do I want to do? What do I want to have? What are the experiences I want to put, in this lifetime, this year? What's that about? And I would really encourage you to make sure that your financial goals include those desires. And the reason is because, again, like that's where the universal support is. That's where the fulfillment is. If your desires also have to do with making money, that's where the real big, that's usually where people can make a lot of money. And I don't want to say it's not like easy, like you're not going to work for it. I mean, it's easeful. Like the work, even if your like mind or body gets tired, your heart still feels full, right? Like I feel easy in my work because I love my work, right? Like when my clients, make more money, pay off their credit cards, send their kids to X, Y, or Z, when they travel, when they go places, like that stuff lights me up. It delights me to no end. Like I get so much secondhand gratitude off of this. And so I love that. Right? There's a fulfillment that comes, in doing work that you really enjoy. I don't know, have a month where I don't make as much money or whatever. Like I still got to see my clients. I mean, I always like the money. I always want to make a certain amount of money, but at the end of the day, like, yeah, my work feels good, right? And so these are the things that I really want you to consider for your money as you're coming into the new year. Now, listen, we have a lot of things that are happening in January. So if you are not on my email list, you're probably going to want to get on my email list because we just have a lot of new stuff that is coming out. So you can go to cashconfident.com/subscribe. And that will, then you'll have access to all of our best stuff. I wonder if do I have anything else to say about this? Okay, I guess I'll just give you one more little kind of like idea about desire is I would just put an alarm on your phone, every day, just check in with yourself. Is there anything I desire here? And the more that you meet your desire and you don't shame it and you take action on it, the more you become used to, aware of that feeling of desire, right? Because a lot of people are like, a lot of times I talk to people, they're like, I literally don't even know what I want. And fair enough, like, especially if you have a lifetime, 20, 30 years of repression, and somebody just asks you that, you really might not know. And that's fine to be where you are. But if you want to tap in more towards knowing what you want, just get used to asking yourself, follow your desires, especially for small things that are easy to do. Like if your desires are like, I want to go for a walk, take the walk and then notice how it feels to be in that desire place. Notice how it feels when you're completed the walk, because the more you follow that desire, the stronger your intuition gets around it, and the easier it is, right? The easier it is. So you have to start where you are, right? And if you're like, I haven't known what I wanted since 1999, well, all right, well, then start by just asking. And that is little stuff. And what I would encourage you to is once you know what you want, don't second guess it. It's funny. I like to play this game at restaurants. Like I know there's certain places at certain places I know I like certain dishes, and that's like what I want. And sometimes I'll be really like on point with the desire, and I'm like, I know that I want this, and I don't even really need to look like at a menu or whatever. I'm like, I know what I want. And sometimes I know what I want and I still look at the menu and then I second guess and I wobble and I go back and forth and I ask you what you're going to have and and it's like, that's so much less powerful. It creates a lot of overthinking. And so I would encourage you to do it both ways, especially if you're new to desire. One day, go and just order the thing that you want, and you don't need to look at the menu. I know what I want. I'll have the chicken parm. And another time, go and you know that you want the chicken parm, but let yourself waffle. Be like, do I want this? I could get a salad. The salad is healthier. You could be like, I could get that. It's cheaper. And just watch what your mind does when you're overthinking your desires. And I just want to point out here too that another I guess problem that comes with not knowing your desires is the mind will spin. So I always think about this, like the heart leads more on the feminine side, right? And so your sweet little heart knows what she wants, and then the mind that makes the plan, right? And so if I'm talking about masculine and feminine within the same person. So I'm not talking man woman here. I'm talking about you within you. So your heart is going to have your feminine. The heart is in charge of the desire. And when the mind does not have a good, clear desire, it spins. So let's just say, I'm going to just give you an example to ground this here. So let's say I said to you, we're together and I'm like, I'm really hungry and I want to eat something. And that's what I said. Chances are you're probably going to go into, okay, well, do you want to stay in? Do you want to go out? Do you want Chinese food? Do you want Italian food? You want to cook? Do you want to go to the store? Like, where are we going with this? And though that place of like, well, what do you want? Where you start to spin through the options is the mind trying to like get an answer from the heart, right? It's trying to get that clarity. Now, if I said to you, all right, well, I want a nice Italian dinner. I want to go someplace that's going to have tablecloths and a nice glass of wine. Right now in your mind, you probably have you could probably pinpoint that clearly. You probably have a restaurant like right now, in your mind. And the reason is because the mind creates the plan, right? The mind helps to put the plan in place to get the desires met. And so if we don't have good access to that information that comes from the heart space, the mind will be in a perpetual state of spinning. So if you're someone who does a lot of overthinking, if you're second guessing yourself, if you don't trust yourself, chances are this is going to be really, really important work for you. And so anyways, between now and next week, most people will have a little bit extra time to reflect. This is a good time to kind of reflect on these sorts of things. And so as you're putting your goals together for 2026, I just really encourage you to be like, what do I even really want? So that way we don't set goals that are boring or dry or not the truth, those kind of vibes. So anyways, all right. Well, it's Christmas, so you probably have stuff to do. I have stuff to do. All right. I love you so much. And I will talk to you next week. And then in January, we're going to start a whole new series. All right. I love you. Bye.